How to replace your income through property investing. Now, a lot of people message me because they've been following my journey and they've seen the progression. I think it was in 2023, I bought 13 properties in 1 year. My portfolio as it stands right now, I own 30 properties in Nottingham, and people want to know how you can do that. So in this video, I'm not going to tell you how I've done it because my situation is quite unique. I'm going to give you strategies, tips and tricks, and by the end of the video, you're going to know exactly what to do on how you can replace your income through property investing. There's one thing replacing your income, but there's another thing taking it to the extreme and owning 30 properties. This video is about replacing your income. So this is really, how do you go from point A to point B? Point A being you're in a 9-to-5 job, you're working hard, you're not necessarily enjoying that job. I know what that's like. I've been there myself. The reality of it is you can change your situation. Now, I'm going to show a short clip here of the narrative right now, which I'm hearing a lot.
I think the reality is, for kids from poor backgrounds, it is almost impossible to realistically get even financial security, never mind wealth.
Guys, do not fall into this silly mindset. Honestly, it is possible to change your financial situation. So if you are in a bad situation at the moment, do not listen to this guy. I need you to listen to me right now, okay? You want to get into property? Right now, you're listening to a property guy. I live and breathe for this stuff. So in terms of strategy, the thing is, lots of strategies will actually allow you to replace your income, but what you need to do is go for a strategy that is going to consistently pay you, okay? Because some strategies within property, they are very much quick cash. For example, deal sourcing, that is a very much a quick cash strategy. That's not going to give you that consistency that you need. Yes, with deal sourcing, you can find a property, you can package it up to an investor and sell it for a sourcing fee, and you can make, say, £3,000 to £5,000 in one transaction. Now, on paper, it sounds great, but what that's not going to do is it's not going to give you the consistency of having that income coming in every single month. So that strategy there, it does have downfalls and downsides, but all strategies do. But what you need to do to replace your income is not go for that kind of strategy where it's a quick cash thing. You need to be going for something that's very much consistent. So what I see working the best right now in 2025 is either buying properties or doing rent-to-rent temporary accommodation or rent-to-rent social housing. That's what is working right now. So of course, if you have the capital to buy a property, then yeah, that's perfect. But if you're watching this video, you might not be in that situation. You're trying to replace your income through property. You may or may not have a good budget to work with. If you have less than £10,000, I would recommend you get into rent-to-rent social housing or rent-to-rent temporary accommodation. If you have more than, say, 30, 35,000, then 100% you need to be buying something, but also do the rent-to-rent side as well, because a budget of £35,000 in today, 2025, it's not going to allow you to fully replace your income through property. I'm just being honest with you. But is it an important part of the process to buy something? Yes, it is. Because what you're doing is, guys, you're building wealth through that side. Okay, so when you own properties, that's how you're building wealth. When you do the rent to rent, that's how you're building great cash flow. But this is not just normal rent to rent. Does normal rent to rent work well? No, I don't think it does, guys, because say, for example, with normal rent to rent, you rent a property from a landlord and you would give it to working professionals on a room by room basis. That's like rent to rent HMO. With that strategy, you have to pay the landlord's rent. You also have to cover all of the bills. And what that means is, guys, it's very hard to make very good profits by doing that strategy. Okay, bills increase massively, particularly around COVID times, massively jumped up, and they've not really come back down. So it does kind of wipe out a lot of your profit if you're doing that strategy. Now, if you own the property, then yeah, you can make really good money through doing, HMOs, working professional HMOs. But through the rent-to-rent side, you will struggle to make those kind of deals stack up. And as well, if someone moves out of one of the rooms, you've got a void period. If someone refuses to pay their money in the month, they refuse to pay their rent, and guess what? You've lost your profit for that month. Also, rent-to-rent Airbnb is inconsistent. You don't know how much you're going to get per month. Every month you start out on a blank canvas. That is probably one of the easiest strategies to start with. Airbnb, like rent-to-rent serviced accommodation, and also deal sourcing. And that's why everyone's trying to sell a course and push that narrative, because it is the easiest to do. can literally make sure that the landlord is happy with you putting the property on Airbnb. You can lease it from the landlord, rent it from the landlord, and then just bang it on Airbnb. It is easy to do. But is it a premium strategy that is going to make you money every single month and you have that clarity? No, it's not. With rent-to-rent social housing and rent-to-rent temporary accommodation, there's two ways of doing it. You can basically take a property from a landlord and you can lease that property to a social housing provider. Or you can take a property from the landlord and you can give it to the council for temporary accommodation. Now, with both of these strategies, you know exactly how much you're going to get paid every single month. You know you're not going to have void periods because the provider or the council will cover that. They give you a guaranteed rate. You know exactly how much you're going to get paid. They also cover all of the bills and all of the maintenance. Now, there are some slight differences. For example, with the social housing providers, I'd say 90% of them, the different providers will cover your bills on the property. Some of them won't, but in all the ones I work with 4 different providers, they all cover the bills, okay? And I've never known anyone to work with a provider and the provider not cover the bills, okay? So it's very rare that they won't cover the bills. Now, this is an important factor because when the provider covers the bills, what that means for you is you no longer have to call Eon Energy and be paying all of these different bills on all these different properties. You don't have to do that. So you're freeing up a lot of time. Also, the cost involved in covering the bills on a property is a lot of money. We're talking on a normal, say, 4-bedroom HMO, we might have to pay £450 or £500 in a month just on the bills. So the council tax, water, gas, electric, Wi-Fi, all of these costs as a landlord we have to pay for. So when you do social housing, they pay for it. So the provider will cover all of the bills. Another thing is the void periods. If you have a property, a social housing property, you don't get any void periods, okay? Because they give you a long contract, and in that contract, it states exactly how much you're gonna get every single month, and they have to pay that no matter what. Also, the contract is normally a long contract. So you know for the next, say, 3 to 5 years, or sometimes 7 years, a lot of my ones on my properties that I own, they are 7-year contracts. You know for the next 7 years, or 3 or 5 years, I'm gonna get paid X amount, and you can work out your profits very easily. To me, that's the only real sure way of replacing your income through property, is knowing exactly how much you're gonna get per month. Because say you're working a 9-to-5 job and you've got some Airbnbs all over the place, how do you know if you've replaced your income or not? Because your income is that inconsistent. It's so hard to track it on a month-by-month basis. Whereas if you have a portfolio of rent-to-rent social housing deals, or you have a mixed portfolio of you own a property or two, and you have rent-to-rent social housing, rent-to-rent temporary accommodation deals, it's very easy for you to know exactly how much profit you're gonna make every single month with these kind of strategies, as opposed to deal sourcing, Airbnb. So the reason why I'm breaking it down in this way is because the most common strategies what I see people getting started with is deal sourcing and rent-to-rent serviced accommodation, which is rent-to-rent Airbnb. Those are the common two that I see a lot, and to be honest, they're not the best strategies to start with, so I'd kind of move away from that. Now guys, I'm honestly giving out this advice, and I know this is a bit general. For some people, rent-to-rent Airbnb might be great. It might be great and it might be working well. Hats off to you. I am happy for you if that's working well. But this is me speaking from experience. Okay, I've done Airbnbs before. I actually own an Airbnb property and I've done rent-to-rent Airbnb. For me, I just don't like the strategy. Too inconsistent. Okay, so replacing your income, number one you need to be looking for is consistency. What strategy is going to give you the most consistency? If you're buying properties or doing refinances in 2025, you're going to need a mortgage broker that's got your back. Mortgage Style, they are the best in the game. I've worked with them for over 5 years. They've always had my back and they'll have your back too. Link is in the description. Now, when you do replace your income, okay, so when you get to the point where you own a property and you've got rent-to-rent deals going on, rent-to-rent social housing deals, or you've just got your rent-to-rent social housing portfolio, what I want you to do is do not leave your job too early, because you don't need to. You don't need to leave your job. You can get paid from your job and from your portfolio. That is a very sweet spot to be in. I've been there myself, and I said to myself, okay, I don't really like this job, but I'm going to keep it for a bit longer and stack up. I'm just going to stack up. And that's what I did, guys. And it was really worth it. I worked in a call center selling insurance for 3.5 years. The first year, I was on one property. Then the second and third year in that call center, I ended up owning 5, and I was buying my 6th property. Okay. So towards the end of that 3.5 year period, I went part-time. Okay, I went part-time. I cut my hours in half, and that was a great move for me, because what it allowed me to do is still earn from my job, still have that very stable income from the job, but also my portfolio is now paying me a lot. And back then, I was investing all of my money into property. I was going all in. So I kind of needed as much income as I could at that time. So for me, I'm glad I did it in that way and I didn't rush to leave the job, because the truth is I could have left that job when I was on like my 3rd HMO. I could have just left, but I decided to be patient and to wait. But it did get to the point where I was buying my 6th property. I had a few renovations going on, and I was under the table calling the builders in the call center. So everyone was taking calls. I should have been taking calls. I was under the table like, Dave, yeah, just put it outside, put the plaster outside. I'll come. I'm nearly finished work. I was under the table making these kind of calls, guys. Yeah, just don't leave the job too early. Now, in terms of strategy, one thing I implemented, and you could do the same, is, say for example, you decide on your strategy and it's rent-to-rent social housing. You could always sell some deals on the side as a secondary strategy. So say for example, you have your main strategy as rent-to-rent social housing. Your secondary strategy is when you find a deal that you don't want to go ahead with yourself. Maybe you find a deal that is good, but it's not amazing. So it's still profitable and you could do it, but you just don't want to do that deal, okay? Those ones there, you can literally package them up and sell them to an investor. Now, that's what I did. Obviously, my focus, when I started, it was actually rent-to-rent Airbnb and buy-in. But then I realized the rent-to-rent Airbnb wasn't for me, scrapped that off, and I literally focused on buying. The receipts match. Go back, I've got videos on rent-to-rent Airbnb back 7 years ago when I started on YouTube. Click on oldest to newest and it'll show you my oldest videos. But yeah, I scrapped off the rent-to-rent Airbnbs and I focused purely on, buying and BRR. And buy, refurbish, refinance, rent. That's the strategy, what I wanted to do the most, and I wanted to get the benefits from that strategy, and that's what I focused on. And obviously, I put my heart and soul into it. It's been stressful, and it has worked. It has worked for me. But going back, if I was thinking in day one, when I'm working in that call center, if I was thinking, Luigi, giving advice to myself 7 years ago, I'd say to myself, go for rent-to-rent temporary accommodation. That is a great strategy. Now, guys, this is not some shameless plug here, but myself and Sean, we run the High Performance Academy together. And basically, Sean teaches the rent-to-rent social housing side, rent-to-rent temporary accommodation side, and I teach the BRR side. So in like a couple hours, I've got a mentoring session that I'm about to do with my BRR students. But on our program, we've got over 150 members that we've kind of coached over the last 2.5 years. And the people that are really killing it, we're talking about making a lot of profit every single month. They're doing rent-to-rent temporary accommodation or rent-to-rent social housing. Those are the two sweet spots in property right now. And if I was giving advice to myself 7 years ago when I was starting out, I'd probably say, Luigi, buy one. Okay, I still want you to buy one, but have this as your main strategy, rent-to-rent social housing. And that's just me being genuine, guys, because when you buy properties and you focus that as your main strategy, what it does, guys, is it means a lot of the time you're going to be going all in. So you're going to be going all money in. You're investing all of your pennies, down to your last pennies, into your property deal. And that can be very stressful, especially when you're starting out with, little to no money. And you're scraping together your deposit to buy, you're borrowing off investors, you're working with different JV partners and investors. You're basically trying to scrape the money together to do the deals. In the early years, it probably will be like that for you if you are starting out with, not much money, okay? But once you progress with your journey, then you can start working with investors on a bigger scale and joint venture partners. That's what I did. But the first 3 deals in particular, it was hard to scrape that money together. You're literally having to go all in. So for that reason alone, based on the stress that I went through, I would say I'd advise myself to go down the other route. Right, so I want to give you an analogy right now, and it's going to help you to understand. Right, so I want to talk to you about the snowball effect. It's essentially where something starts very small. So say, for example, you're trying to build a snowman and you need to make a massive snowball. You don't start by getting massive clumps of snow and pushing them together. You start small and you build it up, okay? Then eventually you put it on the floor and you roll it, okay? And you try and make the snowball go from here. It eventually goes bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's what it's like in property. And that's why they call it the snowball effect. I hear one of my favorite investors in the world, Warren Buffett, speaks about the snowball effect and how it's happened in his life. Things started out small and it grew and it grew and it grew. And now, look, obviously he runs Berkshire Hathaway, which is obviously his investment company. He's massive. He's a giant in the space, one of the biggest, was one of the richest men in the world. And he even speaks about this. The snowball effect is going to come into play when it comes to replacing your income in property. Remember, you are going to have to start small, okay? Unless you've been gifted with 500k or £1 million, you probably haven't had that happen to you. You are going to start small, scrape together the money, buy something, do rent-to-rent social housing. You are going to start small, but eventually it's going to go bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, a great example of this is in my first year in property, I bought 1 house. My second year in property, I bought 2 houses. My third year in property, I maybe bought 4 houses. My 5th year, it was my biggest year. I think it was 13, my 5th year, or it might be my 6th year. But basically, either my 5th or 6th year in property, I bought 13 houses in 1 year. And that was like a massive change from doing 1 a year. So you can see there, it's a snowball. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So keep that in mind, guys. And when you're feeling like giving up, just remind that to yourself. Just say, look, it is going to be hard at the start. And this is the graft time. It is going to be very, very difficult. But once you get on the ladder, it's easier to climb up the ladder. I hope that makes sense, guys. And I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, then drop a comment. Let me know what else you want to see. And I'll be happy to make those videos for you guys. At the end of the day, I want to help more people get into property in 2025. And if you do want further support and guidance, then I do run a training and mentorship program where I teach BRR, and my business partner Sean teaches rent-to-rent social housing and rent-to-rent temporary accommodation. So if you want to find out more, then just click on the link in the description of this video. But thank you for watching and have a great day.